Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about rendering a white product on a white background. So sometimes this can be quite tricky because you have to balance the shade of the product to the shade of the background color. I'm going to take a white product that I got off CG Trader. You can get this too. It's a free model. I'll put a link to it in the description so you can download it and you can follow along with this. So let's open a fresh Blender file and we'll drag our FBX file in, delete the cube, the camera and the light, and let's zoom in on our product. Just check the model before we start. Seems like it's good quality. We need to apply the textures still, so let's check the materials on the product. So there's only one material on the main, and then we've got these two sections here. Take a look at our reference photo. You can see, I think this was made in 3ds Max, so we'll just have to apply the textures quickly. So it's got this logo on the front, which we'll put on there, and then this display. It looks like the outside of this is supposed to be metal. So we'll just make our own metal shader for this. So we'll go into the shading, right click these to get rid of them. Let's go this way, right click and join down. Okay. Let's change this to metal, make a new material. And then let's turn off the roughness, turn off the normal map, sorry. Let's make the roughness 5 metallic all the way up. Okay, we'll just leave that there for now. And then this is supposed to be the display. So let's make a new material, call it display. Pick users because let's drag in, let's check. So what have we got here? There's a logo, and then I think that's supposed to be the border. I don't know, but I'll just add this in. So I'll add this in like that. And it's already UV mapped, so that's good. Make it a little bit more raw. Better. Keep the lightness up. Okay, that's good. Let's add the logo as well. So let's check if the UVs are done. So go in UV editing. One on the keypad to go in the front view. Looks like they might already be done. Yep. So let's go in shading, then the logo. Yep, as you can see, the logo is already done. Plug in alpha as well. Paletteness probably. Oh, I guess it's just, yeah, the logo is actually. Let's make our own version. I'll put the image texture in the description, downloadable, so you guys can follow along. Let's just do Helvetica, plop it there, just delete this. If we put it in the same place, it means that it should be the same on the render. We'll make this white. You can do this yourself if you want, but if you want to just download the texture below, the updated texture below, you can do that. Okay. Make it a grey, dark grey. Actually, I think design-wise that would look a bit better. Okay. And then let's just go into our UVs. So let's drag this up. UV editor. I'll to select all of this. And let's just move it down so it's more central. Okay. If we wanted to get a little bit fancy, let's do it anyway. Let's get fancy. Let's make this a roughness map. So let's have the material, the product be a little bit more rough. But then you might be thinking, why can't we just do this here? Which technically we can, but then the logo will be rough too. So let's make the product a little bit more rough, and then we can make the logo matte, or we can make the logo metallic. We could do that as well. Let's see. So let's just quickly another version of these. And black is rough, and white is no, black is reflective. Sorry, and white is rough. So we'll make it like this. And then for now, let's make the logo rough. Let's do that. Just change. All you need to do is just go in. You can follow along with this if you want, or like I said, you can just download the textures. But it's some good logo roughness. And then let's remove the normal map, we don't need that. And I could make the logo embossed as well, but I think that we're kind of veering away from the point of the video a bit if I was to do that. Make sure you change this to non-color actually as well. Don't forget that. We can make some adjustments to it if we need be. Let's set up our file and then see if the roughness worked. So let's change the cycles. GPU, very important. If this is grayed out for you, make sure you go into System Preferences and turn on your GPU. Turn denoising on optics 64. On the render put 256 with open image GPU. Color management, super important. Change it to Filmic. You can use AGX as well if you want. I've seen videos online. Actually, it's been a while since I saw them. But when I first started working in 3D visualization, I watched some videos that you were using standard. They're using standard so that they could get a white background and make sure it's pure white, because you can see when you change it to Filmic, you have this off-white. But this technically works, but it's really bad. Don't do it, because basically you will get insane overexposure. Now you can adjust the lighting to fix this, but you're just going to constantly find yourself having overexposed areas of the product when you do your lighting, and that's just going to be really annoying. So just make it Filmic, and then we're going to make it more bright in post-production or within Blender, but using the compositor. Any more settings to set up? Yes, medium high contrast we'll start with. We can always change it later as well. Go on our layout, set up our layout. This is how I set up my UI for product rendering. If you want to copy this, you can go ahead. If I'm just doing renders, no animation, I'll just join these together. Actually, no, we can do this version. And then we'll turn these off here so we can't see any of the grid or the UI elements. Maybe, actually, let's flip it the other way around, sorry. Let's flip it the other way around. Add the shader here, and then have our space this size. Yeah, that's better. Let's start our lighting. So the main problem you have when you're lighting a white product on a white background. So for example, you're doing some project work and the client intends to have their product on Amazon, and Amazon requires complete white background on the images, or maybe their website has completely white background. I'm not talking off-white, I'm talking 000 completely white. If you have a white product, you're going to have to essentially, let's say for example, let me just show you. If this is the product, so hypothetically, this is the product on the screen. It's essentially your job to balance out the color of the product so that it is different to the pure white background, but not too far off that it looks really bad. Because I'm telling you now, there is a very fine line between having it essentially too close to the background to the point where you're getting areas that are blown out, or just slightly too dark to the point where the product no longer looks white, it looks more grey. And the problem you have is that this color here is being compared to the white background. So this looks kind of grey, but you'll notice that if I turn off the white background and use a black one instead, this suddenly doesn't look so grey. It looks more white, even though it's the exact same color. You can see that when you use the white background, let's say this is the product, it looks a lot more white. You would say that this is a white color. You might say this one is white too, but it has that, even though it's the exact same color, because your eyes are comparing it to the white background that goes along with it, it looks more gray when it's on a white background, and it looks more white on the black background. Because if you're working with a client that has a white product, you have to bear in mind and kind of communicate to them how when you put the product on different backgrounds, it's going to look a different shade depending on the background that they use. So if they plan to use white backgrounds, you're going to have to light the product in quite a bright way. Let's add a sat node so we can adjust this. So you're going to have to light it almost up to like this point, right? Saturation. All the way up to where it's close to being blown out. If the client then puts this on a black background, the product might look overexposed. So you might have to do two lighting setups. Or what you can do is for some products, you can kind of find a middle ground if you set up your lighting based on a dark gray background. If you set up your lighting on a gray background, you can kind of find a area that kind of works with both black and white backgrounds, and then you can provide the render with a transparent background, so they can use both. But it's very tricky. And best case scenario for best quality, you want to set up two lighting setups, one for darker backgrounds and one for lighter backgrounds. So yeah, let's do this. So first thing we're gonna need to do is change our world settings. Most people probably know this setup, so it's not mine, it's not unique to me. This is something that a lot of people use in the visualization space. In Blender, this node setup. So just duplicate your backgrounds, add a mix shader, add a light path node, and plug in the is camera rate to the FAC. And that's what basically what that's going to do is you're going to have one background that's going to affect the actual lighting on the product, and one background that's going to affect the color of the background, but not actually change the lighting on the product. So for example, you can see if you change this one, it's going to make the background black or white, but the lighting on the actual product doesn't change. But if I change this one, you can see the lighting on the product changes. If I move this, they're separate. Okay, so one's a background, one's lighting on the product. Let's turn off lighting on the product for now. And super important to consider this one element. When you're working in Filmic, the max one on this white is not actually pure white. So you might set up your lighting according to this color background and find out that actually it's not pure white. You want to go to at least 5, probably 10. As you can see, it's still getting more bright. 25, still kind of more bright. So let's keep it 20 for now. This is kind of as close as we can get. I mean, we could go 50. It's not really making much difference now. So let's go to 25. And that will ensure that we light the product base exactly on this white background. Now, something to consider is that you may have the freedom to use a slightly off-white background. This depends on the client's requirements. It's quite common in industrial design rendering to use a slightly off-white background. Let me see if I can find some examples. Okay, so if I type in product rendering industrial design, you can see that we've already found some renders that use off-white backgrounds. Sometimes I think when you upload on Behance without a background, it puts this kind of off-white. So you can see the background of this website, Behance, is pure white. And you can see that the background of these images are not pure white, but these ones are. Okay, so you will find a mix of lighting techniques. You can see this one is a little bit more light, but not quite, used within product rendering. And in this video, we're going to discuss rendering on a pure white background, because this is the most tricky to get the lighting correct, because you risk the product looking too dark or blowing out the product and it not being able to see it. In the future, we'll do tutorials on how to do lighting like this, which is super popular right now in the industrial design space, where you have an off-white color background and then dark shadows and stuff. But today we're going to focus on something more like this, using a white product. This is specifically for the use case that you're working with a client and they need a completely white background because they have their images on their website with a white background, and they don't want this disparity here where you have the pure white and the not pure white. They want it to seamlessly transition on their website, but their product is also white. So you're struggling to get the balance right in terms of lighting. Now I'm going to set up my camera rig. Now this camera rig setup, I do believe I got it from a YouTube video like 5 years ago. I probably won't be able to find it now. But basically everything that you learn usually comes from someone else. It's kind of the way the industry works. I'm sure other people also use a setup similar than this. What we basically did is just add an empty cube, put it in the center, add a camera, move it up, change the rotation, and then parent it to the rig. It just means that we can move the rig around without moving the camera, and we can change the parameters. So let's have a look at our scene here. We'll do a square background, so 2048, and I like to bump this up to 150. I also like to go into the camera settings and turn up the pass part out so that we can't see the rest of the scene. And then let's turn those off in this viewport so we can focus on our product. Let's now rotate this back down again, move it up a bit. Let's put our product in a more dynamic position, similar to this style that you can see with industrial rendering. So let's move it into a more interesting position. Don't forget we've got 3 objects here, so let's make a plain axis. Alt-G to make sure it's in the middle, and let's just parent it so that we don't forget at some point. And let's create a more dynamic positioning for this product. So we want the logo to be visible. We want to make an angle that's a little bit more interesting, more dynamic. We want to see the display because that's going to be a key factor of the product. We want to see the bin inside where you can put your pet. I guess it's a scale for it's a scale so that you can weigh your pets, your cats probably, or your small dogs. I don't know. Doesn't really matter for this video. Okay, let's do this. Okay. Now, super important element now. I'm going to increase the focal length. So something like, we'll start off with 100 and then we'll zoom out. Maybe we'll scale it down a bit, 75. Or maybe we'll scale it up actually. Let's see. Let's decide what we like. Yeah, I prefer more. We want to have some nice room around the product. This is more of a compositioning. Oh, we're using the wrong thing. It's more of a compositional factor to consider. Awesome. Okay. Let's name these quick so we have a bit more of an organized file, and make sure we save our file as well. Call this cam, call this product. We'll make a new one called light. Now, one thing I always do in a scene when I'm lighting a product is add a reflection plane. I basically always do this because for me, it pretty much always enhances a render, enhances the realism. Usually when you have a product photographs in real life, this is the way that they'll set it up. And when you add something like this, it means that when you shine light on the product, it's going to bounce back and illuminate the bottom of the product, which is realistic. It's the way light works. And if you have absolutely nothing there, just the void of space, when you add the light up there, it's going to be completely dark on the bottom. And unless you're going for a specific contrasty look, that's not going to kind of look realistic. You can always move this around so that it's not impacting certain areas of the product, or you can also change the material on it so it doesn't reflect as much. But yeah, this is something I basically always do. And this is a good way to make those off-white background renders if you have a plane like this. But for now, we're going to go into visibility and we're going to turn ray visibility off so that it's not in our scene. What this basically does is it will turn off the plane in the camera view, but it's still affecting the rest of the scene. So it's still affecting the diffuse, the glossy, and transmission, and shadow inside the scene. So if we shine a light, it's still going to reflect back, but you just can't actually see the plane in the camera. Basically, what we're going to do, we don't need another one of those. What we'll do now is we'll add some lights, and we'll just play around with the lighting, and some of this is just playing around and moving the lights around so that you can get to a kind of lighting angle style that you're looking for. And then we need to tweak the balance of the lighting so that we can get that look where the product still looks white, but it isn't being blown out by the background. This is why, by the way, it's super important to set up this and make sure you don't light with the transparency off, because as I mentioned before when I was discussing this example here with the way that white colors look when you compare them on a black background versus a white background, if you light the product without the white background, it's going to look nice based on this color. But then if you're going to provide the client the file with a white background, or they're going to add a white background, they're going to do that and then it's not going to look, it's going to look too dark. And I'm telling you, a product on a completely white background that looks too dark looks so bad. Even if the lighting is a good setup, even if the lighting is photorealistic, it just doesn't look right. It looks like the product is not lit, because it doesn't make sense when you have this completely white background to have a product that isn't really well lit along with it. Okay, so let's add our lighting. So first step for me is always adding an area light above the product. This is a super good way to just start off and kind of get the ball rolling. We'll make it a disc. It probably won't impact this scene much, but there we go. You can see it. So one thing that you need to bear in mind with lighting is the size of the light really impacts the way the lighting hits the product. You can see if I can make this much bigger, you can see it's much more dispersed. So let's scale this in. I'm going to move it forwards a bit so it's not lighting the entirety of this metal section. You see when it was back there, it was kind of too much. But we want this darker section there as well. Okay, and now we're then going to add some lights to the side. Generally, I pretty much always start lighting a product with a tri-lighting setup. So global illumination plane, light on the top, and light on both sides. This is where we need to be careful, and this is why it's super important to have the product on a white background. Because you can see as we move this light further to the back, or closer to the product, you can start to see some of the edges kind of get blown out a bit. We want to have some variation in the shading on the product. We don't want it to be completely flat, but we don't want to go too far with it. Duplicate this on the other side. Right now you see we have the shadow here and here, which is very nice. It's exactly what we want. We get this light lighting this side. If I move it back, it will make it darker. If I move it forward, it'll be more flat. This is a particularly hard product to light because it's not really got much going on really with its kind of design. All of these right now are still on the base power of 10. During this process, you're basically just kind of moving the lights around a bit until you get something that you're happy with. Some of this can't really be taught. It's kind of something that you need to just practice and try and get the eye for. You can see that now, as I'm playing around with this, I'm seeing we're getting a bit more interesting lighting on the inside of the product here when I move the light back, because see where the ray is hitting, it's creating shadow on the back panel of this kind of bowl. Whereas if I have it more forward, the whole of this bow kind of gets consumed by white. So moving this back kind of helps with that. It also creates more shadow on the outer kind of edges of the product, which is really nice. But it is now completely lighting up this metallic ring section, which is not good. Best thing I could think to help with this is to add some light linking. So if you go into a product, making 2 new collections, a main and display, and just put the display elements into one collection and lighting, the main product in a different collection, and then select our main light, go down to shading, light linking, type in main, and now it's only going to affect, the lighting there is only going to affect our actual product, and that means we can set up some lights for this display section so we can have a little more control. I'm liking the way that we have this dark shadow here. You really want these variations of lighting on the product where you have this darker shadow on the corner and the light here. Generally, this is a desired look. Now, every time you work with a client, they can have different opinions. Again, it's kind of subjective. If they want to go a certain way, you should go that way. But if you're doing something for your portfolio, for yourself, or if the client doesn't have any opinions, generally having shadow mixed with light and some contrast on your product when you're lighting in will help a lot with photorealism and increase the appeal of the product. Let's set up the lighting for our display. So we'll make a new collection so we know which ones are for the display. Let's add another area light, make it a disk, make it much smaller, and immediately go into light linking. And tie it to our display. That means that we can make it much smaller, let's say 0.1. And now we have more control over the lighting on this area. And generally with metallic sections, it's really nice to have the gradient on the material. Obviously with metallic sections, you want to make it clear in the render that it is metallic, and a great way to do that is to have some sort of gradient on it. If it's all block one color, it's not gonna be abundantly clear that that is metallic. You know, that could just be white because it's the same shade all around. You can kind of see some reflection on these corners here that make it a little bit more obvious. But just wondering if we could subdivide this quick. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So do that if you are following along. So let's try and add more gradient back. So let's light up this side. If I increase the strength, it will make it more white on the side, but we don't want to go too far with it. Something like this would be perfect. Let's just subdivide this as well while we're here. Do 2 on the render, 1 in the viewport. This side is a little bit too dark, so we'll make another light, make it much less power. And rotate this one, play around with the way it hits our product. This one should also have the light linking on it, but let's just check. Yeah, it does because I duplicated it. Turn it down a bit. Turn this down a bit as well. That's looking good. Let's do some final touches here with this angle. So let's just want to make sure that you kind of move around the lights a bit. So you can decide if where the light is exactly how you like it. See, if I make this smaller, it increases the light on that side. Somewhere in the middle is perfect. Now, this is pretty close to being as light as it could be before it gets faded out, but we might be able to increase it a bit further. Let's have a look. So look, if I double the power, you can see now it's starting to blend into the background. Let's reduce it down. It's too exposed. You can see how I went over the line there. As I double this, this is now too exposed. This is too dark. So it's all about finding that balance. One little trick that I like to do when I'm working with white products is if you go into the lights and you add 0.6 hue and 0.05 saturation, it's going to add 0.6 hue, 0.05 saturation. You'll notice that the default color in Blender is actually, I think it's a tiny bit warm. I don't know if that is actually just like my monitor or just my eyes, but I like to add just the tiniest bit of blue to the default lights. We could do the same. This one as well. Find it looks a bit better when working with white products. See, to me, my eyes, that looks a little bit more pure white now. Let's increase the brightness of this. A little bit more contrast on that metallic section. I think that's pretty clear that's metallic now. I do have to say our product is not looking as reflective as I wanted it to. And I think the big reason for this is the fact that it's white. Because we kind of want the product to be a little bit more rough. No, a little bit more effective, sorry. Let's add a clear coat. You can see I made the color black there just so I could see it better. Let's change the hue back some. This still might not come out much. There it is. Okay, it does come out. So if you're working with a white product and the client says, "Oh, the product needs to be more glossy," the product is not that rough, and you might already have the roughness all the way down. You might have it all the way down. You can see it. You can barely see it, and you can only really see it if you make the product black. And even then, it's still kind of hard to see. So this is because a couple of reasons. First of all, it's because when we're lighting on a white background, we want to make the lights nice and big, so they fill out the product because that will match the lighting. So that means that the lights aren't very harsh; they're very kind of wide and flat. And because of that, there's no real areas on the product to show like a shining reflection. So you're not actually going to see that very well. You might need to add a clear coat. Clear coats are a really good way to add glossiness to the product without if you're struggling to see it. This is a little bit too much, so the weight is just like the strength basically. So we'll keep that. Let's put that 0.75. Let's add the roughness, some roughness back to it though. I wanted to add some reflectiveness to show you how you would do that with a white product on a white background. So now we can basically just decide ourselves how reflective we want it to be. But bear in mind, you can use this technique using a clear coat if the product you're working with is reflective and the client is saying it doesn't look reflective enough and you're reducing the roughness and it's not working, you can add a clear coat. But for us, what we'll do is we'll whack this up to 4. I'm thinking something around kind of in terms of the roughness, like 0.35, and then I might drop the weight just so it's not as obvious. See how much of a difference that metallic change did? Because even if I make the clear coat to nothing, you can see just adding the metallicness adds that clear coat right there. Adding the clear coat alone still does the same thing. There's 2 ways of achieving a very similar result. Let's turn our metallicness down for now. Just play around with the clear coat so we can get somewhere we like. We want a bit of reflectiveness on there, but not too much. I think I'm pretty happy with how this is looking.